And then also whatever we try and use local nurseries. So whatever they have in stock is also the other factor. So that's how we've been kind of choosing the tree. And we do have the Shade Tree Commission and the Environmental Cooperative have both come up with a recommendation for trees that do well on streets, right? They have to tolerate ice and salt and things like that because they are right near the roadway. So we do have a list of trees that we kind of choose from as well.
There was a question from Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
Do you plan to review invasive trees like Tree of Heaven?
Yeah, so the question was, do we plan to review invasive trees like the Tree of Heaven? So the city, you know, invasive plant species and trees is a big issue, not only in Poughkeepsie, but the Hudson Valley. We have been working with the Environmental Cooperative at Vassar Barnes. Jen Rubo over there has done a lot of education and shared education materials with the city about invasive species. We do, you know, I don't know exactly what DPW's maintenance plans are, but I know it is an issue in many of our parks, not necessarily our street trees, but in our parks, it is definitely something that is sometimes feels like a losing battle. So I think that would probably be one of the next phases of like a maintenance plan is looking at any realistic ways. And really to move forward with that has to be a partnership with property owners in the city of Poughkeepsie, because you really can't, you know, if you have a park and then you have properties abutting that have these invasive species in the backyard, you know, I know this from the Japanese knotweed that comes up in my backyard that I'll clear it all day long, but if the guy on the other side of the street doesn't clear it, then it's just right there the next, you know, it's right there the next year. So it's ongoing battle. It's very time intensive and costly. So I think it's a worthy cause, but it's definitely something that's going to require a coordinated effort between multiple bodies.
And you gotta dig down and get those
zones. Yeah.
Interrupt, but
it's a full workout out there.
Tubular thing that just spread out.
Yeah, we're commiserating over the effort it takes to try and clear Japanese knotweed. It's terrible.
Yeah.
But you won't plant more ash trees, will you?
No. So the question was whether or not we will plant more ash trees. There are certain species, new hybrids that are resistant to the EAB. I don't think anybody's really palatable. No one's really interested in planting ash trees at the moment until it's just too much of a risk in case the species was to evolve in some way, or I don't know, you know, I'm not a specialist in that, but it's definitely not on our list to be planting ash trees at the moment, which, yeah.
Well, basically, does every ash tree have this bug on it?
Not every, the question was whether or not every ash tree has this bug on it. You know, based on the inventory that was done in 2018 of the ash trees, not every tree was showing infection. It does sometimes take a few years for it to start to show, right? The first thing that you'll start to see is that dieback at the top of the tree, right? That part of it's just not growing leaves anymore, or you'll see the shoots coming out of the bottom, like the tree is trying to grow other ways, right? It's coming, you see shoots coming out by the stump. But it's really hard to identify unless you're shaving off portions of the bark to look for those S shapes or the D-shaped kind of escape roots. But the last inventory showed that not all our trees were infected yet. But what we've seen in other communities is it is very difficult to find any way to slow that spread. There are some kinds of sprays and things that you can put on your trees that aren't infected to try and discourage the EAB from infesting. They're costly. They have to be done over and over and over again. So many communities, and there's a whole section on this in the management plan about the costs and the cost benefit analysis of that. Unfortunately, many cities have felt that it was not worth the cost for the impact that those mitigation measures had.
We have two more questions from Zoom. You mentioned the cropping of trees. Do you work with Central Hudson in their recent aggressive efforts to make sure things aren't overdone?
Yes, we are always trying to work and coordinate with Central Hudson. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes we are not. You know, the strategy that we took in the most recent plantings is wherever possible, we have enough planting sites that do not have overhead wires or underhead utilities. Like So we are just trying to avoid those planting sites as much as possible because of that issue. We have very little control over a utility company that feels it is necessary for the public good to come and top a tree for the safety of their power lines. So while there could be some coordination, that effort to maintain that power infrastructure overrides the city's ability for tree maintenance in many cases.
And here's another question. How do you get a tree replacement for a curbside tree that was killed due to an auto strike?
So one of the best ways there's a few different ways, right? You can call the number for DPW and recommend it there, because I'm encouraging them to put that in the notes in that iWork system next to a tree. So as we get money to plant trees, having gone through this effort where I found a number of households that didn't want trees, I'm very eager to find the ones who do and satisfy those desires. Yeah, so more than happy to do that. The other good way to do it is I find that council members, if you can get a hold of your council member and let them know, like I said, every year they get an allotment of ward funds, and quite often those are used for tree plantings. So that's another good way, is to contact your ward person, make sure they have you on their list for a house or a street that wants a tree. And that's a good way to go about it. So those are my recommendations.
So if you live in a development, say, I live in Stonebridge, are we responsible for those trees, or would the city come in and, some houses are in town, some are in the city?
Yeah, I believe because Stonebridge is a condo townhomes, so I believe it is treated like private property. So I believe it is up to the property owner to maintain those trees within that development. It differs, right? Like if you're in, I'm trying to think, if you're one in Corley's Manor or something like that, right, where that is maintained by an agency that is sometimes associated with the city, there are some of those public housing communities where I think DPW does do the maintenance, but I think in Stonebridge, it's treated like a private property. So if it's on whatever your plot of land is, that would be to you. Depending, I don't know if Stonebridge has like, yeah, it depends if you have like
Wouldn't it belong to the homeowner association, because
if you had a
homeowner themselves do not own any of the property?
It would be in the covenant. So you'd have to look at the covenant for that specific development if there is a homeowners association.
Sorry.
No, but it would be within there. That's where those maintenance details are usually hammered out.
Well, I think it's a real important issue.
Because it's not cheap to take down a tree.
It is not. No, and it's, and once you cut it down, it takes decades for that tree to get back to that same level, right, that it was in terms of the environmental benefits, the shade benefits, the positive impact it's having on the community. It takes many years to get there. So one story is I recently had a developer who was doing an adaptive reuse of a structure downtown and just didn't like the trees out front and was like, can we just we'll replace them for the city. Can we just cut these trees down? And so I looked at the inventory and they're all good middle-aged trees that have another 20 years. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, whatever tree you put there is not going to allow us the same benefit as the trees that are already there. So sorry if you don't like the color of the leaves, but in 20 years, come back to us. If you want to replace them in 20 years after their useful life, then we'll talk. Yeah. That's it.
Any other questions?
Thank you all. I hope you found some tidbits of information useful.
Fascinating. Thank you so much. All right.
Enjoy your job.
Yeah. I'm still enjoying it.
At the end of her book where she talks about everybody needs to plant trees.
Oh, I'm not there yet.
Oh.
Yeah, we all
I'm only halfway through.
Thank you, everyone on Zoom as well.
Are you